All right, so we're back and ready for another deep dive. If you're even a little bit of a basketball fan, I think you know that last night was absolutely crazy in the NBA. Upsets, we had some games that were close all the way to the very end, and some really incredible performances that made me wonder what some of these players are eating for breakfast. I mean, I was looking at the box scores, reading expert commentary this morning, and even comparing it all to my notes from when I watched these games live. And honestly, I'm still a little confused, so thank goodness we've got our NBA expert here to help break it all down for us today.
Yeah, last night was nuts. Like you said, we had upsets, some real nail biters, and performances that'll definitely be talked about for a while. I think last night was one of those nights in the NBA that makes you realize why you love the game so much.
Totally. So many storylines coming out of just last night.
Yeah, and we've got a lot to get to.
Let's jump right into it then. We have to talk about the game that has everyone buzzing today. The Lakers somehow managed to beat the Clippers 108 to 102. I mean, on paper, this one seemed like it should have been a sure win for the Clippers, but clearly something unexpected happened out there last night.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think that the biggest story there was the Lakers' defense. They really shut down the Clippers' offense. The Clippers only shot 44%, which is way lower than their average this season. And they were just abysmal from three-point range. They only made 31% of their three-pointers. It just wasn't the same Clippers team that we're used to seeing.
Yeah, that's wild. And then there's the fact that Luka Doncic led the Lakers with 29 points last night. But LeBron and Vanderbilt only combined for 18. So is this a sign that the Lakers are changing up their game plan and focusing more on a team strategy instead of relying so much on one or two stars?
That's a really interesting point. It's definitely possible. It looked like with LeBron not putting up his usual insane numbers, the other Lakers players were able to step up and really shine on defense.
They really did.
They were disciplined. The Lakers played so well together, and it seemed like that totally threw off the Clippers.
Yeah, and it seemed like even Kawhi Leonard's 33 points couldn't get the Clippers back on track.
Right. He had a great night for sure, but it wasn't enough. Every time it seemed like the Clippers were going to rally and get back in the game, the Lakers would shut them right back down.
It felt like the Lakers were playing 4 quarters of really good basketball while the Clippers were kind of trying to figure things out as they went along.
Yeah, it was definitely a game of two halves. The Lakers had a really strong start and built up a lead, and even though the Clippers tried to come back in the fourth, the Lakers held on, and their defense was just too strong for the Clippers to overcome.
Okay, so let's move on to a completely different kind of win. The Timberwolves didn't just beat the Suns last night. They completely destroyed them 116 to 98. It was a total blowout.
Total domination. They won each and every quarter.
It was like they were playing a different sport.
Yeah, and the energy out there on the court was insane. Like Anthony Edwards was on fire last night. He put up 30 points. And it was more than just his scoring, too. Edwards was driving to the basket, setting up his teammates, and the Suns just had zero answers for him.
Yeah, he was electrifying. Every time he had the ball, I was practically jumping out of my seat. So after seeing the Timberwolves play like that last night, do you think this is the kind of performance we can expect from them all season? Are they a serious contender this year?
Well, that's the question, isn't it? It was a big win for them, for sure. You can't deny that they looked amazing. Everything was clicking, their passing was smooth, and their defense was so tight. But, and this is a big but, they've struggled with consistency in the past. Like we've seen them play amazing games before, but then they fall apart the next week. The question is, can they keep this up?
I guess only time will tell.
Exactly.
But yeah, that win was definitely a statement. It puts the rest of the league on notice that the Timberwolves are a team to watch this season.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what they do next.
All right, so how about a game that had me on the edge of my seat until the last buzzer? The Pelicans barely beat the Jazz 128 to 121. It was a super high-scoring game and honestly could have gone either way.
Yeah, that one was a nail-biter for sure. Both offenses were on fire last night. Kelly Olynyk actually had a season-high 26 points for the Pelicans and 9 rebounds. C.J. McCollum and Zion Williamson both had great games too. And the Jazz put up a good fight. K.J. Martin and Cody Williams both played really well.
Yeah, so what do you think was the difference maker? What helped the Pelicans pull out that win in the end?
I think it came down to experience and resilience. The Pelicans just never seemed to panic even when the Jazz were right there with them. They executed well. They relied on their veteran players, and I think that made all the difference.
Yeah, I mean, that 15-0 run they had in the fourth quarter was unbelievable. They flipped a switch and just totally took over.
For sure.
But actually, something I thought was really interesting was Kelly Olynyk. He's not really known for being a huge scorer, but he had an incredible game last night. Do you think we're going to see him step into more of a scoring role this season?
Well, that's a great question. He was super efficient last night. I think he shot over 60% from the field, and it felt like he was all over the court. It'll be interesting to see if he can keep this up.
Right.
If he can, he could become a real weapon for the Pelicans.
Okay, speaking of explosive offenses, we have to talk about the Thunder crushing the Spurs 146-132. That game was a shootout for sure.
Yeah, it was. It seemed like neither team could miss a shot. Jalen Williams had a career-high 41 points, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was right behind him with 31.
Wow.
It was like they were unstoppable. And even when things got really physical out there...
Wait, hold on, back up. Physical? What happened?
Oh, yeah, there was an altercation in the third quarter, some pushing and shoving. A couple players from each team ended up getting ejected.
Wow. So did that change the momentum of the game at all?
Surprisingly, no, not really. The Thunder actually kept their composure. Even with all that chaos, they kept their focus. And in the end, just ran away with the game.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it is. Especially for such a young team.
Okay, so you mentioned that Jalen Williams had a career-high 41 points. Where did that come from?
Honestly, it was like a coming-out party for him. Everything was dropping for him. He was hitting shots from all over the court, driving to the basket. It was like a whole new level of confidence that we hadn't seen from him before.
That's wild.
Yeah, it was. But actually, I also want to mention the Spurs rookie, Stephon Castle. He had a really good game, too. He put up 32 points even though the Spurs lost. I think this kid's the real deal.
You know, that's what I love about doing these deep dives. There's always something you miss if you just watch the game casually or just check the box score.
Totally.
Okay, last game we got to talk about today. The Raptors barely squeaked by the Magic 104-102. And that one came down to the very last second.
Talk about a close one.
Yep.
It was a real nail-biter.
It was like watching a movie.
Emmanuel Quickley was the hero for the Raptors.
Mm-hmm.
He had some clutch plays in the second half.
I mean, that guy just shines under pressure.
He does. But we also got to mention Franz Wagner on the Magic. He led them with 25 points. And he had that missed layup right at the buzzer that would tie the game if it went in.
I know. I felt so bad for him.
Yeah, it was tough to watch.
But even though they lost, the Magic really gave the Raptors a run for their money.
Right. They were playing with such a sense of urgency. It felt like they really wanted that upset.
So, in a game as close as that one, what do you think was the key to the Raptors' win?
I'd say is their bench. The Raptors' bench really stepped up, and they ended up outscoring the Magic's bench by a lot. In a game that close, those extra points from the bench can really make all the difference.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and the Raptors just showed so much grit and determination out there.
I mean, they got lucky that Franz Wagner missed that last shot.
Right, the Magic proved that they're a team to be reckoned with.
Totally, yeah. They might not have the same level of experience or star power as the Raptors, but they have heart, they played hard, and they showed everyone that they can compete with anyone.
Yeah, they really did.
You know, in a way, I think that last game was like a tiny snapshot of the NBA right now.
How so?
Well, we're seeing more balance across the league than we have in a long time.
Oh, I see what you mean.
So much parity, so much unpredictability.
Absolutely right.
Like, any team could beat any other team on any given night.
That's what makes it so fun to watch.
Exactly.
We're seeing a shift in the league.
Yeah, it's like a changing of the guard.
It's not all about the superstars anymore. We're seeing teams use all sorts of different playing styles now.
And I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
It makes the regular season so much more exciting.
You never know what's going to happen.
Every single game matters.
Every possession counts.
And that brings us to a really interesting point. Like, what does all this mean for the future of the NBA?
Ooh, that's a big question.
It is, yeah.
But it's a good one. It's something worth thinking about. It's crazy to think how much young talent is coming into the league right now.
Yeah, no kidding.
Think about all the guys we were just talking about. Luka Doncic leading the Lakers in scoring. Anthony Edwards just dominating for the Timberwolves. Jalen Williams having a career night with the Thunder. Even Stephon Castle, he held his own against a really tough Thunder team.
That's what I was thinking about, too. The scoring styles we saw last night were just so different. You had Doncic, he was so smooth, just orchestrating the whole offense. Edwards was just attacking the basket relentlessly. And Jalen Williams, it was like he was possessed, just on fire. It feels like every team is starting to find their own identity on offense.
I think you're right. It's definitely a change from how things used to be. A few years ago, it seemed like everything was isolation plays.
Mm-hmm.
But now, teams are passing the ball, players are constantly moving. It's so much more dynamic.
Yeah, it's fun to watch.
It really is.
And then on top of that, we had a couple of games that came down to the wire. The Pelicans and the Raptors, those could have gone either way.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It just shows you that in the NBA, no lead is safe. Every possession matters.
I think those close games really reveal a lot about a team's character.
Oh, interesting. What do you mean?
Well, take the Pelicans, for example. They never panicked, even when the Jazz were right there with them in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, it was like they had ice in their veins.
They just kept executing. They relied on their veterans. That resilience is going to be huge for them later in the season.
Yeah, I mean, that 15-0 run they had in the fourth was insane.
It was like a completely different team came out on the court.
They were hitting everything.
And the Jazz couldn't buy a bucket.
Exactly. Then you've got the Raptors. They had to fight tooth and nail to get past the Magic.
Right.
Quickly had some clutch plays in that game, and the Raptors bench was so deep, they outscored the Magic's bench by a ton.
That's huge in a close game.
Yeah, it really was the difference maker. Quickly, that guy is something else. He's just not afraid of those big moments.
It's like he gets better when the pressure's on.
Totally. But, I do feel for Franz Wagner and the Magic. That missed layup at the buzzer would have sent the game to overtime.
Yeah, it was a tough way to lose.
But even though they lost, I think the Magic proved a lot. They showed the Raptors and the whole league that they're not a team to be taken lightly.
Oh, yeah, they're a young team, but they're hungry.
They're not afraid of anyone.
That's right.
I think that brings us back to our earlier point. The landscape of the NBA is changing.
Definitely.
There's more parity now than there's been in a long time. We're seeing more and more young players come in and make a huge impact, and there's so much variety in how teams are playing.
Absolutely.
So what do you think? Where is all this headed? What does this mean for the future of the league?
Well, I think we're entering a new golden age of basketball.
Really?
Yeah. The talent level is incredible. The competition is fierce. The game itself is becoming more dynamic and exciting.
I mean, you're not wrong.
We're seeing new stars emerge all the time.
Yeah.
And the established stars are being pushed to their limits.
So with all this parity, all this unpredictability, is there any way to predict who's going to win it all this year?
Honestly, I don't think so.
Yeah.
It's anyone's game at this point. We can analyze and speculate all we want, but the playoffs are a whole different animal.
They really are.
One hot streak, one injury, even one lucky bounce of the ball can change everything.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, it's structured, there are rules, but within that structure, there's so much freedom, so much room for things to just happen.
That's what makes it so compelling.
Exactly.
That's why we keep coming back for more. The NBA is just a constant source of surprise and excitement.
I couldn't agree more. But before we wrap up this deep dive, there's one last thing I want to leave our listeners with. So we've talked a lot about the big names, the established players, the veterans who carry their teams on their backs. But what about the young guys?
Oh, yeah.
The rookies, the sophomores, the ones who are just starting to make a name for themselves in the league. Guys like Jalen Williams, Stephon Castle, Emmanuel Quickley. Those guys are the future of the NBA.
And what's really exciting is that they're not just sitting on the bench waiting for their turn.
Right.
They're coming in and making an immediate impact. They're not afraid to take charge.
Yeah, it's like they're bringing a whole new energy to the game.
They're fearless. They're creative. They're playing with this incredible intensity.
And it's contagious. You know?
Absolutely.
Like their energy spreads to the whole team, to the whole arena.
And it's not just about raw talent either.
Right.
These young guys are bringing a different mindset to the game.
Yeah. Like,
I'm not afraid to take risks. They're trying new things. They're expressing themselves out there on the court.
I think that's what makes them so fun to watch.
It's refreshing, for sure.
It's like they're not burdened by expectations or the pressure to live up to some legacy.
They're just playing with this sense of freedom and joy.
And that's really inspiring, especially for younger fans.
Absolutely.
They can see themselves in these young players. They see the potential, the possibility.
It's like they're saying, this is our time and we're not going to waste it.
And I think that's what makes this era in the NBA so unique.
Yeah.
It's this incredible mix of experience and youth, of tradition and innovation.
It's a league that's constantly evolving.
And these young players are leading the way.
They're pushing the boundaries, challenging the norms, changing what it means to be an NBA player.
So to our listeners out there, the next time you're watching a game, don't just focus on the big names, the superstars. Pay attention to the young guys. The ones who are hungry to prove themselves. The ones who are playing with that fire in their eyes.
They're the ones who are going to shape the future of the league.
They're the ones writing the next chapter in NBA history.
And that's something worth watching.
And that's what I love about doing these deep dives with you. We get to go beyond the surface, beyond the headlines.
We get to dig into those hidden layers, those trends that most people might miss.
Yeah, it's about understanding the deeper forces that are shaping the game.
It's about appreciating the game on a whole new level.
Well said. So until our next deep dive, Keep exploring the NBA, keep learning, and most importantly, keep that passion for the game alive.
Because there's always something new to discover, always a deeper layer to explore.
That's all the time we have for today's deep dive. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.